Check the description for the following discount codes. Today we look at GT Amiga's first entry into the foldable cockpit market, typically dominated by the PlaySeat Challenge previously. Next Level Racing have had a couple of different foldable offerings, but I think the ease of folding, the simplicity of use of the PlaySeat Challenge and its price has always kept that ever so slightly ahead of the Next Level Racing ones, which are a little bit convoluted to fold up if you've seen my reviews of those. Good cockpits and reasonably priced, but a little bit tricky to sort of put together and fold away again. But they do come with quite a lot of adjustability, and that's why. So I think the sweet spot for a folding cockpit is enough adjustability, things like wheel deck, pedal tray, perhaps shifter mount location, and the seating angle, but without too much to make it a ball ache to set up and pack away. Because, as we all know, if something's too much ball ache, we're just not going to do it, and that's no good. Currently, this Sprint cockpit from GT Amiga, $169.95, because their Black Friday sale is currently on. My discount, of course, stacks on top of that. So this is very keenly priced right now. PlaySeat Challenge, typically over the £200 mark. So this should be a compelling buy if it performs well enough. Now, looking at the construction, it already looks like it's going to be a very decent and solid cockpit for a foldable. We have to be prepared for an element of flex and wobble with any foldable cockpit. Obviously, it's a compromise. We can't have everything all at once. It comes with, as I mentioned, an adjustable wheel deck. So I'll show you that in a second, going to be angled. We have a gear shifter and handbrake mount included. Again, I'll show you that. And the adjustable pedal tray, which I'll show you a close-up of. Now, it also says the material for the seat is suede, which is quite nice. And it also has a mesh. We'll have a little look at that. And the driving position itself is that typical PlaySeat Challenge, sort of more formula-style driving position than perhaps GT. And that kind of comes by the very nature of a cockpit that folds in like a scissor mechanism. We get very simple single sheet of instructions, if you wish to have a look at that. There it is. And there's a reasonable number of parts on the floor for me to actually put together today. So there will be a little build montage in a moment. Let's have a quick peek at the wheel deck. This is very similar to what we find on their sort of entry and mid-range static cockpits, just essentially, a thin plate, couple of mil thick, and then your angle adjustment by slackening this bolt here and moving this, up and down. We don't have any pre-drilled holes, and I always worry about being able to kind of push past, but with a foldable cockpit, you shouldn't be using that much force anyway. And the nut on here that secures it, which I've just dropped on the floor, is serrated. So what that means is those serrations will dig into the metal once you tighten it up and should prevent it from moving. So I don't think that will be an issue at all. So that's our wheel deck. Our shifter mount, or plate in this case, is thicker than the wheel deck because it isn't supported by anything other than where it bolts on at the side. So that's a good 3 mil, I would say. And again, for the price point, $169.95 pre-discount, foldable cockpit, fine, it's what we expect. Again, we've got to limit our expectations because of its price point and its foldable nature. It isn't a GT Amiga Prime aluminium profile cockpit. This is what we'll bolt our pedals to. I like this idea because these sort of box sections are very, very rigid, and they're going to be bolting onto other box section, and you adjust the distance between them based on what pedals you have, and obviously you can slide them left to right as well. This is a great way to do a sort of lightweight and adjustable pedal tray. It's not even a tray as such, but yeah, I really like this. It's good. Better than having one big plate that's very thin and that can flex. This gives you a much more solid platform to bolt your pedals to. So that's where the pedals go. That's the wheel deck. That's the shifter mount. we'll have a look at the seat very briefly because you'll see it all assembled at some point. I like the design of the seat, the red and white GT Amiga logo. We've got this sort of gloss black here, and GT Amiga established 2009. Oh, that's actually embossed. And this, of course, is suede, as it says on the site. And then we've got breathable mesh, which I always find nice to try and keep you a little bit cooler. This, of course, will slot over the top and strap in place, much like a play seat challenge and some other folding cockpits. So that really is all there is to look at. Obviously, I've got a bag of bolts over there and some more bolts and straps for cable tidying. Here, we've got a clamp there, and this looks like a GT Amiga branded cam buckle strap. A couple of little, whatever these are. I guess we will find out. Interesting. I've seen those before. Right, anyway, enough of that waffle. Let's get it assembled and have a closer look around it before I put some racing equipment on it and do a little test drive. Painless assembly as expected. Whilst there was quite a few parts and still a lot of what looks like spare nuts and bolts on the floor here, you might see, but they're not spare. It's because I haven't actually secured where I'll mount the pedals to yet, because obviously I don't know where I want to put them. So I take them off, put my pedals on them, and then just set it on, line them up once I've sat in it, and then put those bolts through and do them up. And the same goes for the angle adjustment. But already, I'm going to say I really like this. I have sat in it once, and the very first thing I noticed was how comfortable it is. It is wide. One of the things I didn't like about the OG Playseat Challenge is it was a bit narrow around the legs. It felt a little bit cramped. Obviously, if you're a smaller person, not really going to be an issue. But for me, I did. This is wide. In fact, the dimensions I noticed were actually on one of these pictures. So, it is 145 centimetres long and 85 centimetres high to the top of the seat. The width from the shifter mount to this edge is 70 centimetres, and then the width of the actual frame that you'll be sitting inside is 55 centimetres. Now, I don't know how that compares to the current Playseat offering or the Next Level Racing offerings, because I haven't looked that up, but what I can tell you is it's wide once sat in and it's comfortable. So that was really good to see. And obviously when I do some racing a bit later, you'll see me in it and see just how I look, how spread my legs can be in the driving position compared to, say, the Playseat Challenge. I think it looks nice. Everything went together relatively easily. In fact, what I'm going to do now is grab the camera and do a close-up walk around, because I can only show you so much from being stood up here. Oh, actually, before I do that, a couple of tips. You'll need a tape measure, because unlike that Next Level Racing Victory cockpit that I assembled the other day, that came with that excellent little card that allowed you to match your bolt lengths and your bolt diameters, this comes with absolutely nothing except the bolts, the nuts and the washers themselves. Yes, we do actually have washers with this cockpit, which is a big plus. But it references bolt length, and there's some 35mm bolts and some 40mm bolts. Obviously, that's very close in length and not easy to eyeball, even for someone like me who has an engineering background and has looked at all different lengths of bolts for the last 30 years or so. So you'll need a tape measure, or at least you will, to make life easier. And also, during assembly, when I undid the clamp on this side, which allows this to swing round, I'll show you that in the close-up, there was what I think is just a placeholder part that just fell out the bottom. It looks like this. I think it was just there to give the quick-release clamp that's on this side something to squeeze onto without deforming the tube that it clamps around, just for transportation purposes, because it's exactly the same diameter as this wheel deck sort of assembly that goes in there. So you can't use it with it. It doesn't slot inside it or anything like that. So yeah, that's probably just to be thrown away as best as I can tell. I don't think there's anything else of note until I grab the camera and do the close-up. No, there isn't. So let me grab the camera, show you it in a bit more detail. Let's, as always, start at the top and we'll look at this nice suede seat with the embossed GT Amiga logo in it. The seat does feel nice. The finish feels nice. I like the red stitching. I like the mesh to make it a little bit more breathable. And I actually quite like the shape of these, what would be seatbelt, harness sort of guides if you were to actually have it in a real race car or a real race seat. The seat itself velcros on here and at the back here, very much like the Play Seat Challenge. We actually have, I wonder what this was to begin with, it's a little storage pocket for putting, I don't know, maybe your gaming headset in, or I don't know, whatever you might want to go in there. So yeah, a little pocket down in from the back is quite nice. You've got some adjustment here that will allow you to set just how low the whole seat is. On the original Play Seat Challenge, we have Velcro straps here that you could adjust. This has bolts, so it can't be adjusted quickly, but obviously the idea is you set it once to how you want it for your steering wheel, your pedals, your height, and you just leave it. And then of course this will fold up as you sort of close up the whole cockpit to put it away. Presumably, I haven't done that yet. These things that I was unsure about earlier, look like they're wheels. So once it's all folded up and leant back, you can wheel it around on those little wheels, which is a nice, easy solution to that. As we come, we may as well stay low as I'm down here. The pedal tray assembly, or I mean, it's not a tray, but you know what I mean, held on with these really beefy metal clamps. So not plastic like we find on the Play Seat. So that is really on there, that's solid, that isn't going anywhere, but it still can of course articulate up to fold away. As I mentioned earlier, the pedals will bolt to these and they slide up and down. You've got lots of slots so you can have them exactly where you want them based on your leg length and the pedals you're using. Great solution for mounting pedals. As I said earlier, I like that. And then our angle adjustment, you can see the pre-drilled holes there. I haven't bolted it in yet because I don't know where I want it, but yeah, you would just put it and line your bolt hole up from the lowest all the way up to the highest, and that gives you, quite a range of adjustment there. So good adjustments, easy to do. Again, you would do it the once for the pedals that you're using. None of this is designed to be done quickly. Same for that. And then up to the wheel deck here, I showed you earlier, we've got the adjustment. There is actually a fair bit of adjustment so you can point it down towards you, because a lot of wheels have a, as someone pointed out the other day, a natural incline upwards like the Logitech ones. So being able to point it down is also useful. But what I lacked the other day on the Victory cockpit was much of an upward adjustment, and this has plenty of that as well. So we've got plenty of adjustment both up and down, which is good. It looks like you can also go, you can slide it backwards and forwards as well. Again, just undo the two here and that, and then this whole one will move forwards and backwards. Again, serrated nuts, so once they're done up, they shouldn't move. This swings open and closed by undoing this here. It takes a few turns to actually get it to the point where it clears the clamp. So not as quick as the Play Seat Challenge, but we're talking a few turns, not enough to worry about. And then this will swing out. Now, this is one thing I'm not best pleased with, and in fact, it's the only thing I'm not best pleased with. This clamp here, that's what that sort of placeholder was in earlier. If I undo that, this can just fall straight down like that, which means your wheel height is going to constantly be dicking about up and down. Now, that's not too bad, really. You can live with that. But there's nothing, I'm going to try and take this out. Yeah, there's nothing in here by way of like a plastic sleeve or anything. It literally just squeezes tight against this. Now, to try and sort of circumvent it constantly sliding up and down when you get in and out every single time, you can leave it clamped like that, okay? So let's say you've got it at the height you want, you can leave it clamped like that. But every time you swing it in and out, you are going to be wearing away the paint on this here, because we're literally clamping metal onto metal, but with the paint included. So gradually, if you know, every time you get in and out, eventually you'll need to just nip this up a little bit so that it stays, you know, reasonably firm on this. Now, it's never going to wear away the metal completely, because you don't do this so tight that it's going to grind the metal away. But I just don't think it's a very elegant solution. You know, I mean, a plastic sleeve or a Teflon sleeve, you know, something like that would have been nice to have in there. I mean, this is going to mean it remains quite rigid, which is good. But yeah, a Teflon sleeve in there I think would have been nice, just to protect the paintwork on there a little bit. As I say, otherwise the other option is, you know, when you do want to get out, actually undo it, which then removes the pressure on it completely, but as you can see, allows it to plonk its way down. So, I mean, you might be lucky and you might want it in all the way down position anyway, but if you don't, then that is something that I just thought could have been a little more refined. And then yeah, we just do this clamp up here, obviously, and that's in there. Now it's a solid setup, and I mean, you can kind of see how wide it is. Look, from there to there, just in this shot here, and then again, you look where the seating edges are. You can already tell it's a nice wide cockpit, and that gives us comfort, which is great. The last thing on here then will be the shifter mount. As I say, it's a nice thick plate. It can go on either side. It's held on by these two bolts, and that's on there solid. You know, obviously the whole cockpit will have a little bit of wobble in it, but once you're sat in it, not too much. This, absolutely fine for what it is. When I mention shifter and handbrake mounts that are just thin plates and don't have like 90-degree bends to add rigidity, this isn't one of those thin plates. This is a thick plate. It's 3mm. So there's going to be nothing in the way of sort of flex with this before everything else flexes first, you know, so that's perfectly fine. The only thing I didn't like was, I mentioned earlier, they have washers for the nuts and bolts on this cockpit. For some reason, the instructions don't tell you to use washers on the head of these bolts. And if you look, if it will focus, come on. Well, it's not focusing very well, but they're only just kind of overlapping the slots that they're in. So if it were me, I would put two washers, one here and one here, just to spread that clamping force a little bit. I mean, it's not realistically going to pull out, but you know, you see what I mean? It's just not as nice as it could be. So I'd use a couple of washers there. But otherwise, your shifter mount is going to be plenty solid enough for whatever you might want to put on there. So I am already very happy with this, and it's a big improvement over the play seat challenge in just comfort. As I say, I've already sat in it. And that leg spacing, that leg width is just great, and there's plenty of height adjustment there as well. And I'm loving the pedal tray assembly. And just, you know, this is all box section, so great for customization, bolting additional things on. It's much easier to, you know, bolt to something that's got a flat surface than that's a tube. So yeah, I'm feeling quite positive about this. Let's get the trusty Fanatics CSLDD bolted on using some of those bolts that are left on the floor, and you know, have a half hour or so just testing it out. But I'm feeling pretty positive. Hopefully you'll be able to see just how much width there is in this seat. Obviously I'm reasonably broad, and I've got plenty of sort of side to side clearance for my shoulders. My back has got plenty of support, it feels good. And my legs, which is what I mentioned earlier, I can have them like pretty wide apart should I need to. Obviously you wouldn't, you know, you have it for where your pedals are. But yeah, I think the OG play seat challenge would have been more like this. And this is like another 6 inches or something of width. So there is plenty of girth in this cockpit for, you know, larger guys as well as smaller guys. And of course, you can adjust the Velcro straps underneath to lift you up, to lower you down, both in the sort of front of your leg area here, directly under your bum, and at your back as well. in addition to, you know, wheel deck forwards and backwards and all the pedal tray adjustments you saw, and then the overall height of the rig by moving this bolt around here, and the same the other side. So comfort wise, it's no issues whatsoever. Absolutely great for a foldable cockpit. In fact, if I haven't already, there'll be some footage up of me using it now. I think it's probably already up anyway. But yeah, super comfortable for a foldable. Probably, I dare to say, maybe the most comfortable foldable cockpit that I've tested. The Next Level Racing ones are very comfortable because they're also wide. But I think the material on this is just a little bit nicer. It would be very close between the two anyway. But as you can see in this footage, it's sort of wobble and flex that you get in the wheel deck is, you know, minimal for a foldable cockpit. Again, it's a foldable, it's cheap, it's entry level. We can't expect high-end performance. So what you do get is perfectly acceptable for that price point, for that entry level nature, and the fact that it folds away. So no issues with that whatsoever. And the same with, you know, the pedal tray. I've got low cell pedals here, 90 kilos is the maximum. I wouldn't recommend setting it to that sort of strength, because if you press really hard, in fact, if I cut back to me now, if I press really hard on the brake, I can lift the cockpit off the floor. Same with the play seat challenge. It's just the way the pedal tray is attached and the way the whole thing works. It can't be helped. So yeah, no issue using low cell pedals, but you might just want to calibrate them so you haven't got to use all the force available. But you know, as a psych, I mean, I can force sort of flex forwards and backwards. I could do it being a bit tighter because it almost came out. So I was driving with it in that level of tightness actually. So in spite of that, it never came out in use. Yeah, look, it's that side to side. This is actually a lot more rigid than the Play Seat Challenge side to side. I think maybe because of that wider footprint. Well, it's all it can be really, isn't it? And probably more so than the Next Level Racing one as well, because I can put a lot of side to side force on this and it's pretty solid. And backwards and forwards is minimal. In fact, this is actually really quite good because this level, I'm putting quite a bit of force on to do this. And even a Play Seat Challenge with all the additional reinforcements you can buy from third-party manufacturers is still not this solid. So this is actually really impressive. I think this is probably going to be my favourite foldable cockpit to date out of all the ones I've tested. Just like that Next Level Racing Victory cockpit last week was my favourite entry-level cockpit that doesn't fold away, static cockpit. This, I think, is now my favourite foldable. It's big, it's comfortable, spacious inside, so to speak, and there is minimal flex for a cockpit that folds away. Although, we haven't yet folded it away. So let's see what the folding away process is like, shall we? And one thing I need to show you as well, once I've got out of this, is a couple of negatives. They're not deal breakers, but they're negatives nonetheless. So, you know, I mentioned earlier, you have to undo this quite a few turns to sort of let yourself out, whereas a Play Seat Challenge is a much quicker scenario. This is obviously that in real time, not the end of the world. But what is interesting is if you use a fairly heavy wheelbase, like that CSL-DD, and because of the width of this cockpit, the arc, as that opens, takes it a fair way out. Now, what happened when I was sort of setting things up, I wasn't in the cockpit, I placed it there, cockpit tilted forward and actually caught my white TV unit. There's a very slight scratch on it, which I'm a little bit miffed about. But it's my own stupidity, because I should have known that when you add a load of weight further away, give it some leverage, it's going to tip up. So if I get out and just keep hold of it and put it back here, we're okay like this, right? No problem here, it's not going to tip. But if I just lift it a little with one little finger, it gets to about here, look, and there's your balance point. So it doesn't have to go very far before the balance is in favour of your wheelbase. If you then swing this open like that, over she goes. That's without any encouragement at all. And that's why it clouted my TV. And it's a little black mark there. Hopefully, oh no, looks like it's coming off. Happy days. That would have annoyed the crap out of me. So, something to be aware of. If you have a heavy wheelbase, it will, it took a little bit of encouragement actually, So maybe if you get it squashed right down for a couple of seconds, it will stay. I don't know. But yeah, look, it will go. Something to be aware of. The other thing to be aware of that this doesn't have, that the Playseat Challenge does, is there's no stabilising leg that to come out the side here to stop it tipping sideways. But I don't see that as being an issue because of how wide the footprint of this is compared to the Playseat Challenge. Again, it wasn't really for when it was in this position, it was for when you opened it to get out. The original Playseat Challenge, if you didn't have the little extendable little telescopic leg out, it could tip this way. Whereas this, it won't tip sideways. Even if I try, it will still come up, but it will, of course, tip forward. So that's the only thing to be aware of. If you're using a lighter wheelbase, Logitech, for example, G920, which really, you know, these sort of foldables are primarily designed for that segment of the market. I know there are those of us that don't have space for a static cockpit and that will be running something like this on a foldable, but really they're designed for the sort of lower end. It wouldn't be a problem, but yeah, if you are using something like this, as you can see, it tips. Now, let's fold it away. And that means I'm gonna have to just unplug my pedals as well. And we'll follow the instructions because I've not actually folded it away yet. So we'll be doing this for the first time together, and we shall see how it folds away. I mean, this is what I would do if I was running this cockpit. I would have removed the wires from my wheelbase. I would have tucked the wires from my pedals away there. And of course, I will remove my steering wheel. Now, what does it say we do first? First things first, we push these down a little bit, and then we lift this and this together, like so. Does it go any further than that? No, that seems to be as close as it will go. And then we use one of those cam buckle straps that I spotted earlier. Goes around the wheelbase and through those holes here. Now, of course, you don't have to do this. If you're comfortable leaving it not strapped, then you can leave it not strapped. But we'll do it because it's a review and it's good to test everything we can. So that's that strapped up there. Next, we just lift up. Yeah, we just lift up the pedals and use the second strap to hold those in place. Now, I guess depending what pedals you've got and where you have them positioned, you may get this closer than what I have because it's hitting my brake pedal there. So if you were shorter than me and you had the pedals closer to you, this would actually tuck in a little bit more. Let's just get this through here. And then we can test out those little wheels that are on the back to see how well she rolls around, so to speak. Yeah, there we go. And then you can put your excess in the seat. And actually, I could probably put my steering wheel in the seat or in that little back pocket on here. But yeah, that's the profile of it folded away. I dare say that's a little wider than what a Playseat Challenge is. But that's because with the Playseat Challenge, you can undo the two thumb screws for the pedal tray and allow that to slide closer to the rig, which allows it to tuck in further. Can't do that with this because those pedal tray attachments are bolted in place. But nonetheless, that is its profile. It's still folded away. It does seem like a wide boy. Probably similar to the Next Level Racing ones. Anyway, but yeah, now we're on the wheels. And yeah, you can actually, they roll fine. You have to just kind of lower it down, to this sort of angle. That's where they want to be. I was trying to do it like this. It won't move. Drop it down to there. Rolls nicely. So, there we go then, boys and girls. That is the new GT Amiga Sprint foldable cockpit. I'm going to say if you're happy with the profile of it, folded away, you know, it's still going to go in a cupboard, it's still going to go behind a sofa if you need to, or in the corner of a room. You can check the dimensions that I gave you earlier. If you're happy with this part of it, then go ahead and buy it, because it is comfortable, it is sturdy, and it folds away pretty quickly, and it's cheap at $169.95, a little less with my discount. I don't really know what more we could ask for in a foldable cockpit. So yes, thumbs up from me. Well done, GT Amiga. Decent foldable for your first ever attempt. And thank you guys, as always, for watching. Take it easy.